All right. Well, Matt is fashionably late, as usual. Everybody just confirmed for me again that you can see, you can hear, everything's good. And Zaradar, whenever you're ready, I guess we'll just get started without him and see if he pops in
Yeah,
at some point.
there we go.
Oh, there he is. Everybody's.
Speaking of the sunshine,
Yeah, there he is. What's going on, Matthew?
hey Matt.
Oh, he doesn't have his headphone on yet.
Fair enough.
All right, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. I
Can
see you. Everything looks good, man. What did you do?
everything looks great? I
Yeah.
think it might be your new computer.
You think it
I
was
don't
me
know.
all along?
Possible. I don't know.
It's possible. I am. So this thing is telling me that my stream bit rate, Zarda, you might understand this. My current bit rate is 10,228 kilobits per second, and it tells me
okay.
that I should only be at 2,500. So I guess I'm killing it.
Yeah, sounds like it.
All right, gentlemen, what's going on? Everybody is on a time frame. I guess Matt's going to get out of here in like a half an hour. Tobias has to get out of here in a half an hour. So I want to jump right into it. The chat is here. Everybody's interested. Matt, have you had a chance to kind of go over this proposal at all yet? Or you're just
Just a
hearing
couple of
about it for the
times.
first time now? Go ahead.
So I went through it. I listened to it, and I read it. I was a little thrown back by a lot because I mean, there's a ton in there. But yeah, I got a chance to at least look at it a couple of times.
Okay, cool. All right, Zaradar, Mr. Anderson, if you don't mind, you want to go ahead and just give everybody kind of as brief as you can, a synopsis for anyone who maybe hasn't read it yet, or because I can tell you already in the chat, there's a little confusion between your plan and Alex's plan. So you want to lay yours out real quick, and then maybe we'll just ask some questions.
Yeah, let's do that. So I guess in general, my plan is based on how to enable us to somehow repeg the USDC market through utility, because I firmly believe that that is the only viable option that we really have at our disposal. I don't necessarily believe that the printing of any more type of monopoly money to defend other monopoly money is really gonna, provide us anything but a short reprieve from the eventual collapse of whatever we try to do. So the only way is really to try to build and grow this thing organically in a way where there's real demand for USTC through setting up these so-called partition pools, which will allow new people to basically leverage the existing protocol token feature set on the network rather than having to set up smart contracts with CV20 tokens. And that basically amounts to a software as a service style feature that they can pay for and utilize, and thus granting them access to the only asset that we really have that we can sell, which is the users and the network itself.
Okay. All right. Matt, you say that there was a lot to unpack,
Hmm.
which there was. I mean, that was actually a really truncated version of actually what's in this Medium article that I have up here, which took me probably about 5 or 6 times reading through it to begin to understand it. Not that it's crazy complicated if you are in that world. It's just that some of the terms I actually had to go and Google and figure out what they meant, and then once I got it, then I'm kind of good. But Matt, go ahead with some of the questions that you have.
Yeah, I mean, definitely around utility, and I definitely agree with the fact that we do need to really grow this thing based on a lot of the utility. But I do have like concerns with the whole utility side of things, and my main concern that I always bring up with my on the live stream is around being able to do a lot of the activity or a lot of the transactions on chain because a lot of the new utility that's being developed, where you have NFTs and gaming and all this other stuff that they're trying to use Lunic for or use any other type of coin for. Um, I guess I wanted to get right into that. Where would we be able to have some sort of a deposit feature on Terra Luna Classic or on the on Terra Station because it would just help out so much when it comes to utility that's being built now not only looking at the utility that we had, old utility or any old utility that's coming back.
Okay, so I just need to clarify what you mean with a deposit feature.
Yeah.
In what
So
sense?
so basically like how you would go through, let's say MetaMask, and you would buy BNB, or you would buy AVAX, or you would buy ETH or whatever. It seems
Yeah.
like right now we have no ability to, like, we have a middleman basically. We have to go through Binance and all of these other places to be able to do this. And it would just be so much easier for these utilities that, that are coming back to the chain, or being developed right now, to be able to buy Lunic directly, so that you can purchase these NFTs, or uh, do whatever else you needed to do with Lunic. I know it's not directly pertaining to USTC, but in a way it
Well,
technically is, because people
I
can
think I
buy.
understand what you're asking about.
Yeah,
So the idea is that right now for a lot of our markets, the sexes in particular, they act as a middleman because it's the only place where there's really any liquidity.
exactly.
And for me, the whole idea of the partition pools was to create on-chain economic engines that could start driving liquidity that would create demand for USDC, right?
Mhm.
Because the idea with commodity tokens, as I call them, which are just protocol tokens, is that they actually live on the chain and they can't
Mhm.
go anywhere else. That means that they're allowed to leverage the full feature set that is on chain, and thus they can also leverage the market maker system itself once it becomes activated again, right? So the only thing that we need to be concerned about when we make a construct like the partition pools is that they don't help create economic instability in the system. And this is why the remittance corridors and the thresholds are proposed to sort of help ensure that these are China-style controlled when it comes to liquidity flows, because they're meant to service closed financial ecosystems for virtual economies or NFTs or whatever. So I think the whole point here is that when you create a partition pool, you get a commodity token. That token is then natively available within the Terra station, and you can start, transacting it around, airdropping it to people that you want to participate in your idea or whatever it is you're trying to build. And thus, I guess that sort of gives you the deposit feature that you're sort of looking for, correct?
Um, I I would say that probably just adds to adding another, like, token that's available, but even just getting from their simple US dollar to whatever that commodity token is, or to whatever USTC's prices, or you know Lunix prices, or whatever's on the chain. It could even
Yeah.
be Lunatics token that comes out of nowhere and jumps on the chain. But what I'm saying is just being able to take that physical dollar to buy whatever token they have. And yes, if there's a way to build that LP, I feel like that's the way we need to go, to build LP in a lot of that in the Lunic token, so that we can have that deposit feature, or the coins available for people to buy. Do you know what
Okay,
I'm
so
saying? Does
so
that make
I
sense?
think I think you're kind of thinking of like a fiat gateway almost, right? Where people can actually bring in real dollars and buy whatever token they want.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the problem with that is that yes, it can be done in the UI layer, not on chain, not in the foreseeable future at least. But the problem is that it'll always be somewhat centralized, right? Because you have to go through some remittance system or PSP provider or whatever. So I think the closest that I've seen to something like that to date is probably what I think Coinin was proposing, with the idea they had of integrating their sort of feature set into to Terra Station, so you could accomplish something like that.
Okay, so there's no way to do it kind of the same way that, like, MetaMask is doing it, to where they have MoonPay, they go through a third party
No,
payer
I
system.
mean we could definitely do it, but that would be a feature we would have to build, right? Because MoonPay is basically just a payment service provider.
Hmm.
So yeah, we can definitely do it, but it's something that's going to require work. And I think in the short term, our focus is more on getting the chain upgraded, and then getting the market maker system running again to allow these people to come on chain and build new businesses, and having these virtual economies running in a way that will be sort of almost plug and play, right? Because right now, if you wanted to do something similar, You would have to understand how to build a smart contract and deploy it and so on. If we added a feature like this at the protocol layer with the partition pools and the commodity tokens, it would really just be pay to play. You buy some long, you pay with from your wallet. That issues you control of the partition pool with a supply of zero, and then you buy some more long to start capitalizing it and then redistributing those tokens. So there's no inherent complexity involved with having to create a CV20 token and manage that and so on.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Yeah, I think I definitely need to like, further explore this because I feel like just having something that we can easily, purchase Lunic from on chain would just create so much, utility for all the projects that are being built, as well as if anything is using USTC. But yeah, I
Yeah, no,
mean,
I totally agree. I just think that from our perspective, our short-term concerns with regards to the work we had to do to apply the Dragonberry patch and then also getting Cosmos SDK upgraded and so on, is much more critical than adding in a payment plugin, which I definitely think would make sense. We just need to get to a point where we feel like we have caught up with the rest of the pack, so to
mhm,
speak, with regards to the Cosmos ecosystem.
yeah.
And then we will have what I like to call clear skies to try to focus on some of these new ideas, because I definitely think it's a great idea. And there's no doubt it would make the system as a whole a lot more accessible for new investors, because
Mhm,
they could, just download Terra Station and get going. They wouldn't have to go and also create an account on a SEX and start, trading there to buy some tokens and send them and so on.
yeah.
So I definitely agree. It's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that Matt had been talking about in his live streams. I think it was something that maybe even one of the viewers had maybe asked about,
Mhm.
huh? Right? It's kind of where
Yeah.
it came from.
So one of the viewers came out and said that, yeah, I would love to be able to buy it directly on Terra Station, but I just can't. And they were like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to buy it on Binance and I can't buy it there. And it's like I can't own Lunic at all. So it would just be so much easier. I was like, yeah, oh yeah, I could just buy it on MetaMask, but that's the Binance side of things. That's the bridge
Yeah.
coins.
Matt, regarding the actual proposal itself, though,
Mhm.
as far as the partition pools and Zaradar's method of making a way for DApps to kind of be more comfortable getting on chain. Did you have any questions on how all that works?
No, I think I'm still trying to fully interpret a lot of it. Just like I said, I was going through a couple of times, and even though like I feel like it's broken down to me like in simple terms or the simplest terms possible. They're still not like fully clicking with me, and I want to make sure I get into like everything here. So, um, if you do have questions there, I mean, I would probably lean more towards yours because I feel like you said you read it like 5 or 6
Yeah,
times.
yeah, I did, right? And I don't know if you're aware of this, Zaradar, but Matthew has actually a couple of degrees in finance.
Mhm.
We always
Nice.
say that we're not financial advisors, but he technically could be one. So
It,
if
they don't
he,
teach you this stuff in school, though. I'll tell
yeah,
you that.
so
Yeah, this is another type of economics, that's for sure.
it
Exactly.
really is. I mean, it's a whole other world for the majority of us. And as I was reading through, I've got this highlighted on the screen because this for me was kind of like the essence for me of what you think about. It is my firm belief that the only viable option for recovery is to walk the hard road. And that's referring back to when we talked about kind of an easier road and a more difficult road. Embrace our need for quantitative tightening and roll up our sleeves to begin a 3 to 5 year process of building our way out of Goblin Town. Is that a reference to the labyrinth? What is Goblin Town?
Yeah, let's just say that.
Okay, maybe Goblin City or whatever. Anyway,
I've played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons in my childhood.
oh, okay, all right. With new on-chain features aimed at incentivizing business to build on our network. So
Yeah.
right now, I think the community is very much. I don't know. There's this mentality that it's either your plan or Alex's plan, and I think there might be some other plans out there too, but I mean, yours are the two that we've really been hearing the most about, we're talking the most about. Um, and your idea, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex's plan, from your point of view, is a good plan, but maybe not sustainable in the long run. Is that where we are?
No, I think overall, Alex's plan is a good proposition, especially with the component related to the tranche system, which I've spoken with him quite a lot about. I think the concern I have with regards to, trying to issue some new tokens and burning some other tokens or whatnot to essentially what amounts to generate capital will dilute the value of people's efforts. And also, I'm in particular concerned about the optics that you have with the naming of USTN, because that alienates the USTC crowd, which also risks, you could say, community petition almost if they decide to fork off and do their own thing because they don't like what ends up happening.
Hmm.
So from my perspective, I think the tranche is an absolute must. That is the most important concept of all the concepts being floated right now in the proposals. But the tranche can't work without the ABS system to protect it. This is why I built the ABS system originally. And for me, the other parts are more or less implementation details, in the sense that we could just call USTN something else, make it a commodity token and drop it in a partition pool, and then it might be something else and it would probably send some other optics. So I don't really think it's an either or. I think it's about, examining the ideas that get put forth and then trying to have a respectful debate about it in the community, rather than this sort of senseless drawing up of camps where people try to almost fight each other and pit the proposal makers into the arena like modern day gladiators.
Yeah. All right. See, but now this is where a lot of us uh, have a problem, and I made a video the other day talking about kind of how difficult these things are for us regular people to understand. Um, and you put a lot of emphasis on this tranche system. I had to Google tranche system, and then I had to Google the definition of tranche, or how they define tranche. I had to Google some of those words. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like, you've got this level of knowledge, and once you know this, then you can learn this, and then you can learn these things. You guys are way up top somewhere with your knowledge of things, and most of us are barely able to balance our checkbooks, and we're trying to figure out what a tranche system is. So, I mean, I'm not going to
Yeah.
ask you to define it here and explain to everybody what it is, but this is the difficulty that and I think a lot of people are having with saying, all right, we've got to vote on these things, but we don't know what the hell they're talking about. What's a tranche system? How does
No,
that benefit
I
us? How does
totally
it?
understand that. So the tranche system is the on-chain equivalent of LFG, right? So one of the big problems during the DPEG was the management of the LFG funds and how were they spent, where were they spent, so on. So Alex and I have been sort of talking for a long time about this idea that he had since, the very early days of us meeting each other, about building an on-chain LFG, which will require basically the some features that will allow the treasury to start buying up assets, primarily USTN in this case, if that's where we go, or USTC if that's what we stick with, in the market whenever the market hits a certain point. So think of it like a smart contract that basically has to, buy whenever the price drops X%. And that's basically what the tranche is all about. So capitalizing that with the earnings from the sale of USTN, and then allow that to defend the peg of USTN. That's sort of Alex's idea about that, and that's a system that regardless of which currency you use makes sense. It just needs some more mechanical constructs to prevent it from getting sort of bent out of shape when there's a lot of volatility in the system or if the markets get pressured a lot.
Okay. I mean that helps, but I would have to go through probably another 4 years of school to just get up to
Yeah.
to really understanding this. So I'm not going to waste a
Think
lot
think
of.
think of it as this way. It's a bunch of price firewalls that kick in at different intervals in a way that would inherently enable the reserve to earn profits from recovering or from defending the markets as long as the markets eventually recover, right?
Okay.
So that is the idea of the tranche.
All right. Well, we all agree tranche is a good thing. That's that's about as much as I can give you right now. So in your proposal, we were talking about quantitative easing and quantitative tightening again, which I had to Google and let me tell you. All right. So quantitative easing is basically we have a problem. Let's throw more money at it to fix it. Quantitative tightening means we have a problem. Let's work with what we have and come up with creative ways to fix it. Do I have that basically right?
Roughly speaking, I like to dumb it down to, quantitative easing is increasing the money supply, quantitative tightening is decreasing the money supply. Then you have different levels of money supply, like you have M1, M2, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I think there might even be M3. So this includes different types of instruments, derivatives, and so on, right? So when looking at how to fix our economy, we can either create more money or we can make money more scarce, right? And creating more money is the equivalent of quantitative easing, and making money more scarce is the opposite, thus the equivalent of quantitative tightening.
Okay. All right. And you consider taking the path of quantitative tightening the right path, but also maybe the tough love path or the more difficult path. And you're giving an estimation here of a 3 to 5 year process to get our way out of Goblin Town, as you put it. Um,
Yeah.
so, just because I just want to understand it. So, as we're making these partition pools and setting up this scenario where DApps and startups and such would be more willing to jump on chain and do business. You've got this partition pool way of doing it where kind of a token is created for them and something you purchasing it with Lunk and all that stuff. But I'm focused on, I guess, the 3 to 5 year process. Now, in a perfect world, if your system actually did attract in however many DApps it would take for it to really be considered successful, is 3 years to 5 years, is that best case scenario, worst case scenario with your proposal?
I think the time span is more about the time it takes for startups to mature to a point where they start becoming profitable. The implementation itself is not too complex, and Max is actually working on a Medium article to explain the implementation in his words, so people can see that more than one developer gets it. So from a pure implementation perspective, we would probably have it all ready, within the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
But for me, this is a more case of build it and they shall come. So we still have to work on how to incentivize these people. I'm basing my assumptions off the vast amount of input and requests I get related to second layer DApp applications wanting to do something on chain. But inherently, there will be a long process where we need to help these new startups build up. We need to create or configure the capital controls in such a way that's inducive for them to grow as businesses. And if we're good at attracting successful startups, then that eventually will turn into, let's call it a base layer economy that will provide what I like to call a liquidity floor under our entire system. And that liquidity floor is the actual peg. That is the point where the sound money in the system is willing to buy USTC in order to transact with other commodity pools or exit earnings in games because their gain economy is, plus $20 million or whatever. So that for me is the gist of it.
So you're saying, sorry to interrupt,
No, that's all right. Go ahead, man.
TJ. So you're saying with that, 3 to 5 year process, estimate or building that out and getting us out of Goblin Town, whatever Goblin Town actually is. That's basically the repeg state is where we're completely out of it, right? And whatever that repeg state is or whatever that tie back to, Lunic actually is, are we going to see the algorithm back in place, or is that something where once we're out of Goblin Town or back to where we need to get to, that's where we're looking to reassess at that moment?
I think we will be working on the algorithm and other features while the startups are building, their businesses. So no, I don't think it's like do this, then wait 5 years. I think it's do this, and then we progress to working on other on-chain features that we have been thinking about and from my case, dreaming about for the better part of a decade.
Yeah,
And if
and
those things also become, enticing for businesses, then that will also help grow the network itself.
okay, and you expect to, and I may be missing something, but you expect to stabilize USTC, in a different way?
I expect to build a system in such a way that USDC essentially becomes the reserve currency because you can't really swap into long, right? There's a
Hmm.
hard cap of 10 billion on swapping into long due to 3568.
Hmm.
So inherently for these commodity pools to trade with one another, they need an intermediary and USDC will be that intermediary. So again, if the economic engines become big enough, then at some point the current supply of USDC will not be sufficient. And then the repeg will happen almost automatically based on the inherent liquidity from the commodity tokens and partition pools.
Okay, so then USTC for quite some time will be a standalone stable coin without having the support it once had,
Don't
I
say
guess.
stable coin.
I mean, it will be an algorithmic token, right? But the problem right now with USDC is that it has an inherent debt of 10 billion. The second we
Hmm.
hit $1, all of the USDC will be sold for profit.
Hmm.
So this is where, for me, the analogy of the dead mountain fits in. And the only way to really erode a mountain is with small streams of water, and that will take time. The partition pools are these small streams of water. The spillage in their positive sort of growth when they cross above this threshold will allow to seep through the USDC system and generate taxes and so on, utility taxes that will allow us to burn out this debt. And that for me is the only sustainable way to repeg USDC over time.
Okay, okay, I think that makes sense.
You think it makes sense?
Yeah, I try I like question myself in my head, and I'm like, that does make sense, but then there may be like one or two words that I just didn't follow with, but I talk myself into it.
All right.
That's good.
Zaradar, is there any concern about and I know that this question was asked in the interview that you did with Happy as well, but there's no concern about utilizing USTC or having anything to do with it, considering the potential legal ramifications coming down the road, or maybe even some regulations from the U.S. government or wherever else that are kind of banning it. I mean, no problem with that. You don't think?
I mean, I didn't create USDC, did you?
Well, no, but it's what we're
So
talking about.
like I said, on the ATC show, for me, we're scavengers. We're trying to reconstruct a financial meltdown, and I mean, inherently the USDC is there. The protocol supports swapping into it and out of it. So if it's there, if it's being made available in the market, do we become liable for using it? I don't know. I don't think so.
So
If it's something of this USTN, uh, this new what is it, AFT? Is that what it
yes,
is?
Yeah.
yes, algo
Um,
fungible token.
then then how do we stand with that? Because that's something that we would essentially create then.
Yeah, but that would be more of an algorithmic commodity tokens thing, right? So that's more of a commodity than I guess a stable coin. But
Do you think it would be like kind of playing with fire by kind of trying to like
I don't
walk
know.
walk this tightrope of around the regulations or something like that?
I think in general we should try to leave the supply as is and let
Hmm.
the system transact within the bounds of what we can make the software do,
Hmm.
and then wait for other people smarter than us to figure out the legal consequences of this. Because, like I said, I don't foresee a future where I, as a person, will be sued by the US government for writing software on GitHub that enables other people to sell their, USDC to one another.
Yeah. I don't think it's more of a thought of people getting sued. I think it's more of a stable coin getting banned and then everybody putting their kind of thoughts and money into that
No, no,
process.
I get that, but I
You know what I
think
mean?
from my perspective, we need to rebrand the stable coin thing
Got you.
anyways, right? I've said this since very early on. We need to work towards producing sound money that we call algorithmic tokens, because the idea of having a static peg in a distributed system, as I've explained quite a few
Hmm.
times by now,
Yeah.
is somewhat ludicrous anyways. So this whole mania about $1, I mean, who cares?
Hmm.
What matters is that it has a stable growth and or a decline depending on supply and demand dynamics, and that is not, subject to plus minus 20% volatility in a day.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, people bought UST and USTC and whatever because they expected that they could buy this and wake up in a week, and then you might have dropped a few cents, but it wouldn't have
Hmm.
dropped, 50%,
Yeah.
as opposed to their crypto, right? So this for me is the focus. But I definitely think that trying to be an unregulated stablecoin is going to be very difficult in the short to medium term future, looking at what's going on with regulation and what the politicians in Washington are saying and so on.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
see, you
Maybe
see,
maybe we should rebrand it the to a somewhat stable coin.
you see
Yeah.
what I pulled up here, right? The this fact sheet that just came out not that long ago. White House releases first ever comprehensive framework for responsible development of digital assets. I'll tell you, in their very first paragraph, they're pointing directly at uh, Terra,
Terra-like
Terra.
coins.
Well, okay. So, but they also pose real risks as evidenced by recent events in crypto markets, the May crash of a so-called stablecoin, and the subsequent wave of insolvencies wiped out over 600 billion
Yeah.
of investor and consumer funds. Now, I talked to and I interviewed some guys from 3.0 DAO, and I don't know if you know who they are, but basically they're just working with a lot of these lawmakers and lobbyists and stuff who are working on these regulations, and they said that their opinion, according to what they know, dealing with these people, is that they're using this basically. They're weaponizing at this point this issue that happened with USTC and using that to propel some of these regulations that they want to throw down. So, like Matt said, I don't know that it's a thing of individuals getting sued, but I guess it's a concern of some people that if any plan or whatever that involves USTC, that the government, regardless of how we try to rebrand it, it's going to be like a rose by any other name scenario. You know what I mean? It's still USTC, and they've got their kind of focus on it. So
Yes.
that's why I'm
And I
wondering.
totally I totally agree with that. But this is also one of the reasons why I'm so concerned about messing with the supply or issuing more stablecoin like products, right?
Hmm.
We can make an NFT coin or a Pokemon coin or whatever because that's clearly a commodity used within a closed financial system.
Hmm.
But if we create something akin to another stablecoin, I think that will get us into trouble. And also, I think if we can go down the hard road, which is the only road that I see, to be honest, then eventually, if we succeed and we recapitalize the USTC system, that also turns into a positive story because then we make all of the USTC holders whole, right? At some point in the future, it might be 5 or 10 years away, they might get their money back. But isn't that better than never getting their money back?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean,
I'd agree.
a lot of the community, you know how they are. Oh, LUNC first. Why should we take on their debt? That's up to TFL. Blah blah blah. So, you've got that crowd, but then you've also got some other people who are like, yeah, I mean, let's kind of take care of everybody. It was all tied up together. And if I've got more LUNC than I have USTC. But if I had more
Yeah.
USTC than I had LUNC, I'd be on the other side of it.
Yeah.
If this whole situation were flipped around and we needed USTC to bail LUNC out, maybe those USTC people would be like, "Oh, that's not our responsibility." So yeah, I think if there's a way to kind of help everybody, that would be great. And I think that your plan goes a long way, obviously, to trying to do that again.
I think if I can pitch something in here,
Yeah.
right? What's important to understand, and I might get a bit metaphorical now, is that Terra and Luna are like the sun and the moon, right? So in Greenland folklore, there's a story of two lovers who weren't allowed to be together. So a rich, jealous guy cursed them, and they became the son of the moon and the moon, right? So they were forever doomed to chase one another without really getting to meet one another, right?
Okay.
And that means that USTC and Long will be forever intertwined, right? So the only road to recovery is by making both of these things function again. And this is also why, as I've mentioned in some of the other sessions, the system I want to build tries to split the baby by saying, let's destroy some of the long oversupply through using that as a gateway for capitalizing these new partition pools. And then let's also reward the USDC holders by allowing USDC to become our reserve currency. Because at the end of the day, we really don't want to trade long all the time. We want to stake it and use it for governance. And then we want to have a reserve currency that is stable and dependable so people can do business in our network.
All right. You threw in another little metaphor there with split the baby. I caught it.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just tell you that the people that I was talking about that I talked to, the 3 DAO guys, they also had and Matt, this is for you too because I don't know if you're aware of this. They actually had a discussion directly with Alex about this USTN because he is convinced that it will skirt around any potential regulations aimed at stable coins, and they kind of agreed with him. They said, yeah, you've actually thought it out well, and that probably will get by. Where at first they didn't really think so until he really explained it to them. So whatever. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that probably is what is what gets
Well,
me,
yeah, yeah. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball, right? And when you're talking about the U.S. government, you can't really predict what they're going to do or what ways they're going to circumvent.
I think we're going to need an NLA or not legal advice acronym soon, right? Because the fact of the matter is that nobody knows,
Yeah.
right? Until the regulation is in place, erring on the side of safety is much better than taking unnecessary risk.
Exactly.
Right?
All right. Yeah, we'll handle that when we come to it. I guess hopefully we don't even come to it. Zaradar, I want to ask you this if I could. So Edward Kim had put out this tweet about, all right, Alex came forward with a very well thought out proposal, and I support and applaud his efforts. Zaradar has a different proposal, and I support him too. I encourage others to bring their ideas to the table, blah, 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 right? So Ed has worked on both of your proposals, right? Helped you both out, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, Ed has been playing around with the denom system to see what we can do with the whitelisting and so on. And then he's been, spinning up some new coins to test it out. So
Yep.
I think what is important to understand is that my system integrates with any other proposal that people make because my focus is purely mechanical.
Yeah.
I don't really care about price points and Excel sheets and backtesting models because I just care about creating a mechanical system that will lead to less LONC and USDC than they were in place before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can fit with anything. And then I just have an opinion on the QE versus QT, which seems to be maybe not fully alignable with Alex, but in general, I don't really want to try to get too much involved in governance. I want to leave that to the community. I want to be more of an advisor, coming up with good ideas and solutions. And then the community, through proper advisory services, can get to a conclusion on what they want.
Right. So you, I mean, basically, you said exactly what I was leading into, because if you continue to read through your Medium article, you talk about it too. How basically your proposal can work in conjunction with these other proposals, and I couldn't find it. I thought it was on Twitter, but it might have been on Discord, where Ed had actually put something else out that said just that. He said that I don't see why these two plans can't work side by side.
Yeah.
I wish I could have found that. I forget where it was.
But this is what I said earlier. Max, who's the leader of the quant team, he's writing an article also to clarify how these things actually work together, right? So we
Okay.
are working to help sort of help spread the knowledge and educate the community on how these things fit together. And then I think at the end of the day, it's more about being patient and waiting for the, let's call it, intellectual debate to finish, and then we'll come to a conclusion on what we feel works best for the ecosystem as a whole.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Matt, did you have any other questions, or can you still hang out a little while? Or?
Yeah, I guess I can still hang out a little while. Erica didn't call for me, or if she did, I didn't hear her. So
Well, today's Sunday. It's bath day, right? Is that what's going on?
that's later. It's later today.
I keep bugging him about this bath day thing. Anyway, private joke. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. All right.
No,
So all right. So when these proposals come up, okay. First off, is yours? Is it set? Is it solid now? Just ready to be proposed and put on Terra Station, or is there more tweaking to do?
The way I see it, anybody can put it on Terra Station if they want to, right? I think from my point of view, I would want to do some analysis work, try to figure out what work items and stuff to put on the backlog and come up with some sort of time frame and our budget for it, and then propose it as a package and say, if we do this, it's going to take whatever time, boom, and then that's that.
Okay. I'm not sure if I heard that right. So basically, you saying that basically you came up with the idea and you're leaving it up to someone else to actually propose it, or are we going to see this proposal from you when you feel you're ready on Terra Station with your name on it?
No, like I said, I don't like to get involved in governance. I wrote a proposal. Anybody can, put it up on Agora, and if people vote for it, then I'll happily implement it.
Okay.
But from my point of view, I want to try to remain neutral on governance matters because otherwise I will probably get too much influence and ultimate power corrupts and all that shit.
Yeah.
So I just want to be a Kung Fu Panda sitting around at the river with my fishing pole writing code whenever people need it.
All right, cool. All right. So I encourage everybody to go and read through this and do what I did if you don't understand it. If you come to words and stuff that you don't get, just Google them and figure it out. Because it's easy to say, well, I really like Zaradar, so I'm going to vote on his proposal. Or I really like Alex, so I'm going to vote on his proposal. But that's not the way we should be voting. I'd like to
No.
see everybody understand this as much as possible so that they're actually making an intelligent vote. Don't listen to what I say on my stream. Don't listen necessarily to what Matt says and just go by that. Do your due diligence. Read these things, figure them out. And I'm very, very happy to have Zaradar on, Alex on, Ed on, all these guys to give you the information right from the horse's mouth, as it were. And that's what we attempted to do today. Matt, I think you were looking at the chat. Was there any questions coming from the? I don't want to ignore these guys. I'm just not really good at chatting and seeing what they're talking about at the same time.
I was trying to look at a couple of things, but I did want to go kind of a little bit off subject
Okay.
with like the proposal 5234. And
Yep.
since that has been like passed or is passing, um, what's the process after that? Because I'm not really the biggest fan of changing it to 0.2%, but I go with what the community really wants. I don't know if they truly know everything that they wanted there, but what's the next steps? Do they have to go through a change proposal then and
Well,
then
that's a
approve
text
that?
proposal, right?
Yeah.
So now comes a parameter proposal.
They
Yeah.
need to do a parameter proposal and change things. I think the good thing about 5234 is that it's community driven, right? Some people think that somehow Terra Ripples is behind it or whatnot, but for my knowledge, it's not. I haven't even read it yet, to be
Yeah.
honest. I didn't know about it until the ATC show, but I think it might be too low.
Yeah.
But again, as Ed wrote in his article about, taking big steps downhill and so on to sort of figure out the right pace to descend towards the bottom of the valley. I think in systems like this, it's better to have big initial steps as well, and then we can get closer to a median that sort of works for everybody.
Yeah. If I had to give my opinions on it, which I always like to give my opinions on it, which you'll probably see
Really?
a video. You'll see a video probably coming maybe today
That's
or
super
tomorrow. I'm
cool.
not sure. But yeah, I just have like 3 points that I believe, and this is all my opinion, so I respect everybody's opinion, but I don't believe that it will change volume that much. And I think Ed said this that he doesn't believe that it'll change volume as well, because point two is still higher than point one, and a lot of the fees that you have on a lot of these CEXs are still going to end up siding with that. So it's only going to change the burn volume a lot lower, in my opinion. And then also people, I think he said this too. They didn't really give a lot of time for this to factor in or play, because it's been less than a month and we're already like, hey, we need to change this from 1.2 to 0.2%. Like, just give it a little bit of time. Why don't you? It was literally like, I think day two to where people started mentioning that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it's 2 days. What are you doing? And then number three is I don't know. I guess when we think of bringing back more utility, I feel like we're sacrificing, or we're basically satisfying the few to sacrifice the many. Because I feel like there's going to be a lot of utility that can actually work under 1.2, but then there's a few that really can't work under that 1.2%. And I feel like all of the other utility that's going to come on and have burning associated with it to decrease that supply will now have
Uh,
to implement their own type of burn.
I think all of
you know
this has something to do with the phase we're in, right? We're
yeah.
still in a highly speculative phase with
Yeah.
people doing leverage this and that. As I alluded to in one of my other talks, I believe that, a 1.2 or even a 3% tax can work just fine if you have a network that's focused on micropayments.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that a lot of these people are focusing on moving around billions of dollars, which I don't think will ever be happening in our network other than on spreadsheets and stuff like that. And that means that, it depends on the type of network that we want. I think we should focus on having a network that prioritizes microtransactions, integrating with machine economies and these things. That is something that's going to be, highly needed in the future. It's something that's going to need a much more efficient network than that which Ethereum or Bitcoin can provide. And it's something that would actually do quite well with a 7 point whatever trillion supply token, because there's tons and tons of IoT devices and stuff like that that needs to have tokens to transact for various things and so on. And in that world, taxation will work just fine. It'll probably be required, and it might be a lot higher than it is even with 1.2%.
in your professional opinion, right?
Uh
uh, you know, with the it's not financial advice. No, when it comes to the volume that was on chain and you look at all the volume through Terra Station, every time I look at it, I'm always comparing it to what it was before the 21st.
Yeah,
And it's like, you know, cut by 10. Like that's how it looks. It
yeah.
looks like you're dividing it by 10. And I, for
But
the life of
this
me,
is
can't
the
really figure out why. I'm thinking that CEXs have a stranglehold on a lot of it, or I just don't see a reason
no.
as to why
I
it would drop
think
that
that
much.
the reason why it dropped was because the DPEG made it prohibitive of doing, certain types of transactions because of the volatility.
Hmm.
And then after the burn tax got introduced, all of the, let's call it wash trading transactions running through the network basically ceased because it became, a cost for them. It's very easy to bloat transaction volume if it's virtually free to do the transactions. Once you start paying a percentile tax on the transactions that you're doing, then you can only do so many round trips before you lose 50% of your value. And that is obviously what happens. But I've spoken on this subject many times before, and in general, I tend to think that all crypto valuations is always at any time a logarithmic step above their real value,
Hmm.
right? And we just lost that logarithmic step, which is why we dropped to our actual, transaction value, or the honest transaction size, volume, whatever.
All right, cool. Um, Matt, anything else?
No, I think that's it.
All right. While we're off the reservation and talking about other things, um, I don't know if you know anything about this because I know that you are all about the code and stay away from this stuff. But a lot of talk about end keys, a lot of talk about how we need to get away from TFL. Lots of talk about maybe a new Terra station. Um, are we moving? Are we moving totally away and totally becoming independent and making a whole new system? Is that happening, or are these rumors?
The deposit feature.
Well, not the deposit
What?
feature quite yet, but if you look at our GitHub, you will notice that we have archived the old classic core repository and started building a new classic repository where we're currently in the process of producing a new client, basically. And this repository is totally severed from TFL, meaning that we are now, the canonical repository. We have no upstream, whatever. And that will obviously at some point be followed by a similar action around the Terra station and so on. The timeline for that is as yet to be determined, but we are taking the first steps in these directions, yes.
Okay, all right. I mean, a lot of people really believe that we need to get the hell away from TFL as soon as possible. So, like anything else, there are going to be people who love it and people who, you know, are a
Yeah.
little afraid of it or whatever, but it is what it is. All right. Gentlemen, I know that we've been here a lot longer than a half an hour. It just feels that way, and I know that you both have things to do. So I really appreciate your time, genuinely. Thank you to
Cool.
everyone that's in the chat. Ryan, I did catch that super chat. I appreciate it. And if there's any others that I missed, I'm very sorry that I missed them. But when we do these live chats, I haven't set things. I got a screen over here. I got the chat over here. I got to figure out a better way to do this, right? But I'll get it together. So if I did miss anything, I apologize. I just want to get this out. Shout out to Caden, who at Best Buy in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, sold me this new system that makes Matt actually look good because he's looked horrible in the last ones, right? I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thanks you guys for being here. Honestly, I did have a lot of other questions, but I just, I think we got the gist of it out.
Hmm.
I've been trying to monitor the
Cool.
chat. I think everybody is kind of getting it as much as we can get it. When these
Hmm.
things come up for proposal, hopefully you've got enough information, or at least you've got the resources to read through this stuff and try to figure out what you want to do. But thanks
Hmm.
again, Tobias, for being here. Thank you, Matt, and I
You're
hope you
welcome, man.
guys I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Take care,
Thanks.
guys.
See ya.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Peace.
How do I get off?